something else. Okay, I see it. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Whitman Zoning Board of Appeals for April 12th. So before I begin, just to explain to everybody who's participating, obviously you all know we're in a Zoom meeting, and we have a decent number of members of the public here tonight. So the procedure we follow is I'll read some of the paperwork that we have on the case. We'll then ask the applicant to make a presentation and explain what they are proposing to do. I have some letters from town boards to read into the record, and we'll also have questions from members of the zoning board. After we do that, then we'll go out to members of the public and give you the opportunity to speak and ask any questions. So bear with us. This is we've been doing this now for a year, and I'll certainly say I'll be very happy to get back to live meetings. It's a lot easier to do, but we do the best we can with what we have here. Obviously, if you are a member of the public or you're not speaking, if there's any reason why there's background sounds like a dog barking or something like that at your place, please put yourself on mute until you're called upon to speak. Okay, so with all that said, I'll call case number 7 of 2021 to order. Location of property 558 Plymouth Street, type of district residence A2, type of structure proposed, owner's name Laurie Kelleher, owner's address 558 Plymouth Street. When did you acquire this property? 2011. Has application been filed with town clerk? Yes. Has any previous appeal been made? No. Section of bylaw of which relief is requested, section 5-4I2. Reason for asking relief: I do not have 75 feet from my neighbor's property line, which is required for me to have a private stable on my property. This case was advertised in the Whitman Hanson Express on March 25th and April 1st. And sitting on the case will be Mr. Andrews, Mr. Claus, Mr. Chandler, Mr. Gometti, and myself, John Goldrosen. At this time, we'll have the reading of the list of abutters. Mr. Claus, do you have that?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
The following is a list of parties in interest within 300 feet in accordance with the requirements of the State Zoning Act for the parcel located at 558 Plymouth Street, book 40245, page 199. Carol Everard, Christopher Cuddy and Jennifer Jordan, Scott Conant and Michelle Labate, Rita Donovan, Tanya Roach and Kenneth Amaru, Jason Bouzy, Stephanie Kruger and Christopher Guerrero, Jared and Jennifer Curtis, Deborah Leonard, Donald Rosemond and Joelle Thompson, Melissa Pershinini, Soares and Rogerio Soares, Pius and Catherine Hanlon, Karen Tyrell and Carol Petrosky, Ralph and Ellen Larkin, Virginia Anderson, and care of Virginia Johnson.
Thank you. One other thing I should have done, because this is a Zoom meeting, besides the members of the zoning board that I named to sit on the case who are present tonight, I'll note also that Robert Keeman, one of our alternates, is present, as is Robert Curran, the building commissioner, and Carol O'Brien, our recording secretary, and obviously this meeting is being recorded so that everyone knows that. I'm now going to, before we have the applicant make a presentation, I'm going to try to put on the screen the documents for this case. So let's see if this works. Okay, can people see the application should be on the screen now? Can people see that?
Yes.
Okay, so let me scroll through some of these things here. Okay, this is the plan. We'll get back to this. I'll put this back up on the screen in a minute. This is an aerial shot that, let me see if I can reduce. Let's see how to, anyway, here's the property here that we're talking about, just so people can see it in relation to other buildings. This is a picture of the house. There we are. That's the applicant's house. This is a, I guess you call a shed. It's out behind the house, which we'll see on the plan. This is a picture that the applicant provided of what the barn would look like. And I think that's all that I need to show you all. So let me put the plan back up. And see if I can remember. Oh, there we go. Let me shrink this a little bit. There we go. Okay. So now, Kelleher or Ms. Marshall, whoever wants to speak or and explain, just tell us. Oh, before you do, just for the benefit of the board, I want to read the provision of the bylaw that's at issue here. So 5-4I2 covers accessory uses, and a private horse stable is permitted by right in this zoning district, provided that said structures be not less than 75 feet from any property line, and provided that fencing adequate to prevent passage of animals onto abutting property be established. So the issue here is that the lot itself is only 150 feet wide at the street. It's only about 80 feet wide at the rear property line. So it's simply not possible to put a barn or a stable that would be 75 feet from all the abutting property lines. So the applicant needs a variance. So that's why they are here. So with that said, why don't Ms. Marshall or Kelleher, if you want to go ahead and tell us what you want to do.
So we would like to put in a barn. We provided the picture of the little red house, the little red shed there.
Is this where I'm putting the cursor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the barn would go right behind that. I believe we have to be 10 feet off of the property line anyway. So that would pretty much line up with the shed. So we would put the barn behind that. We figured that that was the best location since it was the furthest point from each of the abutters properties pretty much, particularly the houses, except for the right-hand side. That would be the closest abutter.
Right.
So, I mean, that's our plan for the location and why we did that.
What about the requirement for fencing? Would you be adding fencing to your property as well to contain?
Yes, absolutely. So we would fence in the entire property. We would do that pretty much coming off of the shed and fence in, there's already fencing on the left-hand side. Okay. But we would obviously, in addition to the corrals, I mean, we'd have fenced in turnout for the horses, but then an exterior fencing as well around the property, just as a second layer of protection for the horses.
Like that. And,
yeah.
And run it like behind, have the fence go behind the garage. Okay.
Yes. And then and same thing on each, it would come up, each of them with like a butt at the shed. And then that would be the second layer protection. The neighbors don't have to worry about them getting out into their yard. They would have two lines of two fences, you know, protecting them from both the street and any of the neighbors. So I mean, that's our plan for the fencing. And of course we would do it in, you know, something decorative, and we want to take the neighbors, you know, concerns and everything into consideration. I mean, some people might like to see horses and some might not, you know, so we haven't, you know, committed to a style of fencing other than to say it would be tasteful and, you know, of a decorative nature.
All right. And how many horses would you anticipate having?
4.
Okay. And I'll just, I guess, anticipate some other questions, some questions that other members of the board might have. Do you have to get any other permissions from the town? You know, do your animals have to be approved by animal control officer, or anything else that you need from the town?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, if we do, I'm happy to provide or do whatever, you know, is necessary, but I'm not aware of anything else that we would have to. I believe that there's like a barn inspection.
Okay.
Our horses are currently boarded, so that's not something that I've had to deal with directly, but I know that there is some type of a, I don't know if it's annual or semi-annual inspection, but I don't know if that's done by the town or if there's like a Plymouth County agent, but I mean, if there is, whatever it is, we'll be happy to comply.
Mr. Curran, if you happen to know, you can jump in and tell us.
Yes, John, I believe the Board of Health may want to inspect it, but I'm not sure whether or not Plymouth County gets involved.
Okay, all right. And and is this purely for boarding? Is there any commercial use involved with this? Are you going to be giving lessons, boarding other animals? Or is it just purely for your?
Nope, it's just family. And the only thing that we do is, you know, we've just used our horses for 4-H and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's not commercial or anything like that.
All right. The other thing I'll comment or ask you about is, obviously you cannot be 75 feet from each property line. That's why you need the variance. But while, you know, 10 feet would be okay for any other accessory building, obviously the reason for the 75-foot requirement is the thought with the bylaws, it should be something more. Is there any reason why you couldn't put the barn another 10 feet into your property?
The only reason we chose that, well, we had to make a decision where we were going to put it so that it could be included on the plot plan. Sure. And we thought, so 2 things. One was that particular location is the furthest point, like I said, from each of the property line, except for the one on the right. But that is also the farthest part from that house as far as like the backyard area. And then we have like the back field. So it's not that it has to be there. We just thought that by running it behind the red house, that would be, we wouldn't be changing what people were seeing from the street, you know, and granted we were going to put up a fence, but if it ran behind the shed, that picture would pretty much be what you would be seeing from the street. That wouldn't change. And it would also allow us to utilize the remaining part of the yard area for turnout for the horses, just to kind of maximize their space. But we're not, you know, we're not committed to that area. It was just the style of the barn being long and thin. We just thought that that would be the best type and best area to keep them out of, as far away from people as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with its general location, but I personally would be more comfortable if it was pushed another 10 feet to the left, just so it's 20 feet from the property line instead of 10. We'll see what other members of the board think, but that's just sort of my reaction to it. Before we go to members of the board, I'm sorry, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, I'm actually just looking at the plan. And I mean, I'm not really that adept at reading them, but it almost looks like the 10-foot mark, and then it looks like an additional 8 feet. Am I reading that right? And then initial 8 feet before it hits the shed, because that might just be 18 feet anyway.
it looks like
unless I'm reading it wrong.
you're 10 feet of vacant space.
Yeah,
And you have the barn is 10 feet. And then this is shown to be an overhang.
yeah, right, right.
That's the
10
8-foot section there.
Okay, so technically we were going to build it, even with the, forget about the overhang for right now, but that barn, that 10 feet of barn, we were gonna put right behind the shed. The shed's about 10 feet wide. So it looks like we are actually talking about 20 feet away from it, if I'm reading it right, or
Well,
28 feet.
so if you're gonna put the barn right behind the shed, you'd be putting the barn here. So
Right.
That's not what the plan is showing us. The plan showing us with the
Right.
barn much closer to the property
Right.
line.
I didn't realize that. I mean, as many times as I've looked at the plan, we did say that we were going to put it behind the shed. I think he probably did the same thing to maximize the space
All right.
and to meet the 10 feet. But
so if you had it here, would that be a problem for you?
no, that's basically what we've been talking about doing.
All right.
So.
All right, because that would make more sense.
Yeah.
The street you wouldn't see as much.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did drive by.
Yeah, that's
you
fine.
do have a pretty open view into the backyard. So, okay.
Yeah.
Let me read a couple of letters into the record first before we go to members of the zoning board. I'll read a couple of letters into the record from town boards. From the Board of Health. The Whitman Board of Health has no objection to the petition of Lori Kelleher for a variance from section 5.4I2 for a proposed bond for property at 558 Plymouth Street. As the DPW billing records indicate, this property is connected to municipal sewer and water. Sincerely, Mary Kelly, clerk. And from the planning board, at the March 23rd, 2021 meeting, the board reviewed the plan for 558 Plymouth Street. The planning board recommends denial due to proximity to the property line. Sincerely, Adam Somerville, chairman. I also want to note that the applicant has submitted several letters from people in support of the application. Because of the length, I'm not going to read them all. I'll read one of them, but just for the record, these are all in support of Ms. Marshall's qualifications and her knowledge of caring for horses. We have letters from Angela Bombs of Balmy Acres in Middleborough, Terry Carmen from Halifax, Reva Levin, who formerly lived in the area, now lives in North Carolina, but worked with Miss Marshall. Elizabeth Robinson from the Hampton Riding Club. Corey Hickey from Onstage School of Performing Arts. Casey Arsenault, who grew up in Whitman. And Katie Doré, who's been involved in 4-H. And I think she's here tonight, actually. Ann Sullivan and Susan Paliulis. So let me just read, I'll just read one to give a flavor. I think all the members of the board have been provided copies of these. This is from Elizabeth Robinson. I'm writing on behalf of Rebecca Marshall, a fellow horse person I've known for over 15 years through our mutual involvement in Hanson Riding Club and other equine activities on the South Shore. I know her to be a dedicated and conscientious horse owner who puts health and safety first in the management of her horses and barn. Rebecca's horses always appear especially well cared for, and she takes obvious pride in their welfare. I count her among the handful of responsible people I would trust with my own horses. Okay. With that said, let me call on members of the board. I'll leave this plan up here on the screen in case members have questions about it for now. Mr. Keeman, although you're not sitting on the case, do you have any questions or comments?
I have no questions at this time.
Okay, Mr. Chandler?
The only question I would be asking is, has there been any response from, I believe it's Deborah Leonard, who lives on that other side at 564?
Ms. Marshall, have you been in touch with her? I don't know that I don't think she was here tonight.
No, Deb passed away, and that is why she is not with us. We have spoken to her brother, who is handling the estate, and we did inform him about, you know, our desire to do this, and so, you know, that's where we're at with them. They are aware and seem to be on board. As far as I know, there was no, you know, nothing said that led us to believe that they were against it. We did tell them that we were going through the hearing and that they'd be getting a letter and everything.
All right, that answers my question. Like I said, that is as it is. So,
all right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Andrews?
The only question I have is, what is your provision for removal of the waste products? How often and how would you control the odor?
Yep. So we have, I've reached out to Bridgewater Farm Supply in Bridgewater, and they do provide covered containers, and they do removal as well. So we would do it, you know, they'll do it as necessary. I can't tell you if that would be like a weekly, monthly. I don't know how much that would, you know, how often that would be, but obviously we would do it as necessary. I mean, our goal here is to be good neighbors. You know, I mean, we don't want, if we're able to do this, then we're very appreciative, and we will do everything that we can to make sure that, you know, it's hauled away, you know, on a regular basis.
Well, wouldn't you have some kind of way of picking up the product daily?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant. I'm sorry. Yes, we do our stalls every single day. We don't miss a day.
I'm just going to say you wouldn't want the odor going.
No. I'm sorry. So, yeah, I'm sorry. So no, we do stalls every day. We would do the turnouts. The product that we use is a minimal waste product. There's also it's called Sweet. You'll be sorry you asked all this. A sweet PDZ pellet that you can put into the stall that actually helps reduce any kind of odor. So that's the products that we use now, and we've been very successful with them. And well, then, you know,
you would clean up it around the, you know, the corrals and everything at least daily, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, everything gets done daily. Yeah. Yes, at least daily.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I just wanted to make sure there wouldn't be any problem with, you know, the odors and things from the neighbors. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
No, we do everything we can. No. Thank you, though. Sorry, I misunderstood at the beginning.
Mr. Blas?
Yes, thank you, John. First of all, question, I don't know if it's a point of order or a question. I guess I'll direct it to you as chairman. Our purview here, the only question is, I mean, we're not here to consider what they're doing with waste or what they're, what kind of fences they're putting up. All we're concerned with here is the siting of the barn, correct? And whether 10 feet is acceptable, and or whether 75 feet is, which is required, needs to be maintained. So are we here? I mean, what is the scope of, I mean, I want to talk about the scope of our discussion here in consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Blas. So you're correct. I mean, our only jurisdiction here is over the zoning and over the 75-foot requirement and giving a variance from that requirement. But I think the purpose of the 75-foot requirement is, you know, a recognition that the horse stable, you know, could have impacts on neighbors, whether from noise or odor or whatever. So, and that's, and on the corral, I wanted to make sure that they were intending to, since it wasn't shown on the plan, that they were intending to comply with that part of the bylaw, which obviously they are. But you know, I think it's appropriate to ask some of these questions since we are going to wind up with a stable that's closer than 75 feet to a property line.
Yeah.
But I agree, we're not going to be inspecting it. And I'll add one other thing, which is, we need to remember that when we give a variance, that runs with the land, it's permanent. So Ms. Marshall may be the most, wonderful horse person in the world, but if she, if she and her mother sell the property tomorrow and somebody else moves in, the next person is also going to have the right to the use of that barn if we've approved it.
Right.
So we won't have any control over that person.
Right.
And so it's, it's appropriate to, I think, ask some of these other questions. I appreciate you making that point.
Well, thank you. I'll make a couple of comments. First comment is the letter from the Board of Health. You're not putting a bathroom in here, correct? You're not going to have a kitchen?
No.
No. So it's as if the Board of Health didn't even read the application. Because whether you're not going to connect this to the town sewer, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. Yes, you're correct. No.
And I knew the Board of Health is going to have to do inspections and things like that. And there is the barn inspection and that sort of thing on an annual basis. I'll say this. I was born on a farm. I'm born and raised on a farm. We had a horse, we had cows, hogs, all that sort of thing. There's a reason why barns, stables shouldn't be located too close to the edge of the property. And you've got you have just over a half an acre here. I just feel it's essential that something like a 75-foot setback be recognized. And if you can't do the 75 feet, then it probably may not be an appropriate place to put a stable or a barn, simply because a barn, a stable needs to be away from the lot line for the protection of the neighbors. Mr. Chandler asked about the neighbor that at 564. I was going to ask the same question if they were present, because they're going to be the most directly affected. But I'm just I don't like the idea. That's okay. I'll just say that I don't think it's a good idea having the stable, the barn, that close to the property line. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Blush, just one thing. The area is shown on the plan as 37,000 square feet. So it's actually just under an acre.
Oh, it is. Okay. I thought I did 150 times. Oh, you know what? I did 150 times 80. So I missed that part. So just under an acre. Okay. I stand corrected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Gilmetti? Yeah, do you Mr. Gilmetti, do you have any questions or comments? Okay, we can't hear you. Fred, we can't hear you. No, can't hear you, Fred.
You're muted.
You can hear us, but we cannot hear you. You're muted.
You got to unmute it. Bottom left.
No, we're not. We don't have you, Fred.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Fred, we can, whoops, try it now, Fred.
You got it?
Now
Yes.
we got you.
Okay. All right. John, we did one like this on High Street.
Yeah,
I want to ask Bob if he had all the conditions that we put on that. It would be a good guide because, and also I want to ask Bobby if he had any complaints up there on High Street. We approved a barn on a small lot.
it was like a narrow lot like this one. I remember that.
Yeah, exact same thing.
Yeah, that was, once that was all done and she took care of the animal waste, the problem kind of went away. And I don't think there's horses there anymore. We did have a problem on a property at Nursery Street, but the woman neglected the horses and she wasn't caring for them. The concern I have is the neighbors complaining about horse manure smell. And I think if you put conditions on it that are enforceable, that's kind of imperative if this were to be approved.
Can we see, John, Bobby, can we see is there the conditions that we put on that one on High Street? Is that available?
It is in my office, Fred, and I can get them tomorrow. I'm at home now.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. I mean, that's a good point, Mr. Gometti. I mean, again, I'm sure it wasn't anything burdensome to the owner. But it did, you know, in that case, we did have concerns about that. Again, it was a lot that it was a deep lot, but narrow at the street. So we had a similar situation. And I think the neighbor's house was actually closer. The neighbor's house was deeper into their property, as I remember. So it was a little bit more of a conflict than we have here. Anything else, Mr. Gometti?
I was out there today. I looked at it, and the houses in the rear are quite a ways away. You know, I mean, John, I have 3 successful daughters, and I attribute it to horses. And I'm telling you, it's a lot of work. They have to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning. They're out there cleaning the stalls, and they're out there taking care of the horses. And
can they hear you, Carol? Can you hear Fred? I don't think they can hear you, Fred.
I had it.
Fred, we can hear you, Fred.
Oh, you can?
Okay.
Carol said you
Yeah.
couldn't, so.
No, we can now.
Okay.
Okay. No, John, you knew one of them. You knew Kerry.
Yeah.
And I mean, those girls worked hard. And I attribute their success to the reason that they had the horses. It taught them a lot of responsibility. And I never had to get after them either. And they always had everything all clean. And if they do what the people did on High Street, it's okay with me. I never heard a complaint of the one on High Street. I don't know if I think Wayne voted for that one. And I don't know about Richard, if he voted for it, but if he was on that, it's too bad we don't have that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
You don't remember it?
I don't remember how I voted.
Oh. Well, it passed anyway,
Yeah.
even if you voted no.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Clark.
The issues that came forward from that one was lessons learned from the Nursery Street property. There was issues with fly control, odor, and just overall care of the horses. So I think that if you put conditions that the manure is stored in a closed container or carried out weekly to another site, and fly control is real important because what it does is it will affect the neighbors if it's not handled correctly. So, and it's also my opinion, Mr. Chairman, that you could grant a variance and with an expiration on sale of the property. So I don't think you should be afraid of that.
Well, I'm not sure about that, Mr. Blas, because it really, we're not giving a variance for the use, we're giving a variance for the structure. Okay. So, you know, I don't think we could, I don't.
If I can, I don't know that it helps.
Yeah.
But my family's been here since the early 50s. My mother grew up here. She just purchased it in 2011 when my grandmother passed away. But she's been here her whole life. I spent my childhood here. My daughter has. I'm an only child, so I'm going to inherit the house. My daughter's an only child, so she's going to inherit the house. I included the references for my daughter as well, just to show that she's been doing this forever, and our values and our care of our animals, you know, carry through. So.
And you've been boarding, where have you been keeping your horses up until now, Ms. Marshall?
So they're in Hanson now. We've had them at the same place for 10 years. It's a family farm, not our family, but a family farm. And they spent about another 10 years at a farm on Winter Street. So, I mean, we're long-term people.
Right. So once you have the horses on this property, I guess you're telling us you're going to have to stay here because the horses are going to be here. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly, we're staying. Okay. We're staying. And that's the whole point of this. You know, my mom's here. It gives us a chance to be with her and everything. And, you know, and like Mr. Gilmetti said, it is very time consuming. And it's just, you know, it really came home during COVID, how important it is to be with family. And this will now give us a chance to all be together too. I mean, it's got a number of different pluses.
All right, my comments, and then we'll go out to members of the public for your comments and questions. You know, I'd be a lot more concerned if this house next door was, you know, somewhere here. I do think it's going to be a good distance. I would like to see it moved to line up with the shed, so that if I said 20 feet, but actually if you line it up with the shed, it's probably going to be about 30 feet off the property line. Yeah. So that would keep it. And for Mr. Gilmetti's conditions, I will make an attempt here. Mr. Curran, do you recall the address of the property on High Street? Wasn't it 300 something?
I can probably look it up from my phone.
If you can do that, I can look up and see if I have on my computer a copy of that decision while we're having other people speak to this.
I don't know if I was the chairman at that time or you were the chairman, John.
I think I was, Fred. I mean, I remember sitting on the case. So, okay. If people don't mind, if everybody's had a good look at this, I'm going to close this map here. It's just easier from here on to be able to see everybody. So, if any. A couple of the neighbors here I can see, others I cannot see and cannot hear. If all of you would unmute yourself, and I guess maybe I'll just call on you individually here. Ms. Johnson, did you have some comments on this?
Well, my husband's sitting here. You have questions?
Yeah. Nope.
Oh,
no, we're way over on Rainer Ave.
Our backyards, like we look at each other.
We're looking at the back of the shed, so we don't.
Okay.
The pretty blue house. Oh, yeah. I love that house.
Good.
Yep.
All right, so you don't have a problem with this?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so far away. It's not an issue with us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. Let me just, I see a couple of comments from Mr. Kawadler, sorry. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have a microphone, so he sent a couple of chat messages. He says, will this affect the sale of the house next door at 564 Plymouth Street, the one that's currently in a state? I mean, again, I think if they thought it was an issue, then they would have shown up to to,
I do have a question. Is that if they don't buy the house,
I'm sorry, who's this speaking?
James Leonard,
Okay, Mr. Lennon, go ahead.
and they talked to me about purchasing the land next door, but they don't buy it, it's just going to be an eyesore for me to sell the house to somebody else.
All
We're
right,
gonna
I'm
buy
sorry.
it, James.
Excuse me. So this is Mr. Leonard, and
Yes, it is.
okay? You're the heir, the owner or the heir of 564.
That's correct.
Okay. So why don't you go? I'm sorry, I wasn't putting that together. So why don't you just repeat what your question or?
I talked to Laurie and Becky, and they talked about purchasing the house. But if they don't purchase the house, it's just going to affect the sale on me selling the house on my sister's behalf.
I mean, I would love to answer that. We would love to purchase the house. That's something that we would really like to do and want to do and prepared to do. And if for some unknown reason why that didn't happen, James, we would, no, we want this to be a pretty place. We don't want this to be an eyesore. We want people to look out and say, that looks great. We would not do anything to, but we would never do anything to devalue any of the neighbors. And we are open to having that kind of conversation and a dialogue. And like I mentioned earlier with the fencing, if it's something that you want to see or don't want to see, we're open to it.
It's not up to me because, eventually it's going to be for sale. So, it's going to be the new owners, either you or somebody else. That's the only question I got.
Okay. We hope it's us, James.
All right.
Yeah.
We have to treat the application, without, obviously we're not making any assumption that the house will be purchased by you. I can say that is the kind of consideration we have to make, is what's the potential effect on a neighbor.
Absolutely. We understand that too.
Okay. Let me ask other people that I see on the screen here. Ms. Sullivan, if you wish to speak, you could unmute yourself.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that address was 151 High Street.
All right. I'll take a look. Ms. Leonard, we're not hearing you, so if you're unable, if there's some issue with, there should be if you go to the bottom left of your screen, a way to unmute yourself.
No, I'm here.
No, I'm asking Ms. Sullivan. Mr. Dore, if you could, again, you're muted, if you can unmute yourself, and if you have any questions or comments. Again, we're not here. There we are. Okay, we hear you now.
Hi, yes, I don't have any questions, but I do agree with the barn.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If the members will just give me a second here, I'm going to see if I can locate in my files a copy of the decision. So give me a minute. Okay, I do not have that. Doesn't look like I do. Let me try. Okay, I don't have a copy of that decision. No. Okay, sorry about that. Well, let me just ask the applicant. We did put some conditions on this other property, which did go to those kind of issues that Mr. Blas and Mr. Gometti mentioned about regular pickup of the waste and insects. So do you mind if we add those conditions to this approval without having discussed them tonight? If there were any problem, I'd bring them back to you, but I think Mr. Curran can get us that decision. We'll add those conditions as some assurances to.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Anything else from members of the board, members of the public?
John?
Yes, Mr. Gometti.
Just one other comment. I had horses on Temple Street, and there were no complaints from the neighbors. They were bringing their children over because they never, these kids never saw horses before, and it was a treat for them. And I think the same thing will happen here.
Yeah.
The neighbors will sort of blend in, and it'll be a good thing for the neighborhood.
Yeah. I'll add
you're talking to the choir. Yeah. You're preaching to the choir.
I mean, I did drive by the property. As I said, I actually think putting the corral in, besides being required, I actually think it'll sort of improve the overall appearance of the property. It'll sort of define the backyard in a way that it isn't right now. It's all kind of open from the street. So you may even have a reason why, and it's, we're not requiring it, but I mean, I could see you ultimately wanting to maybe put up some fencing between your, from your house over towards the right, as you look at it, sort of shielding the entire scene from the street might be something you wind up doing, if only, I don't know, security or whatever.
Yep.
So that this might actually lead to that happening, I think. All right, I'm going to close the hearing then and go into deliberations. So the question before us is whether to, let me just add, so would you be willing to have a condition that the barn be moved so it lines up more with the red shed, which would bring it, 20 to 30 feet away from the property line? Okay. I won't ask for, a different site plan, but Mr. Curran, I think, would understand the purpose of that. All right. So we'll go into deliberations on the request for a variance. Is there a motion from a member of the board?
So moved, John. I'll move it.
All right, Mr. Gometti moves. So to approve it with the stipulation that the barn is to be moved to line up more with the shed, the existing shed, and the conditions same conditions are to be imposed for maintenance of the facility as we imposed at 151 High Street. All right, is that your motion, Mr. Gometti?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Mr. Andrews. Any further discussion? All right, I'm going to do a roll call. Mr. Chandler?
To approve.
Okay, Mr. Gometti?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Blas?
Respectfully, no.
All right, and myself, John Goldrosen, yes. So the vote is 4-1, and that is sufficient to approve the variance. So thank you all. Thank you everybody for participating. And
thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck with this. We'll have the decision written up within 2 weeks, and you'll get a copy of that.
Great. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So anybody can who's not interested in the next case can drop off if they wish to. All right. Let me see now who we have here for the continuation of 270. So is Ms. Hughes? I don't see anybody involved with the next cases here. Mr. Curran, have you been into, let me call it to order and then we can proceed. This is case number 4-270 Washington Terrace. This was continued from March 29th. This is the proposal for an in-law apartment. And if board members remember, we had an issue with the design of the structure. So Ms. Hughes is not on the line. Mr. O'Brien, did you have any contact with the applicant?
No, I haven't.
No. And Mr. Curran, did you meet with them or?
Yes, John, I did meet with them. I believe it was Tuesday morning last week. And I thought for sure they would be here. We did talk about a redesign, but I can call her cell phone. Maybe she got the date wrong.
Okay, why don't you do that? Maybe while you're doing that, members, we could take care of the minutes while we're waiting to hear on that one. So I have the minutes for case number 2, Jose Ferraz, 233 Winter Street. This was the one with the in-law apartment in the basement. And the sitting on this, let's see, who was on this? This was myself, Mr. Gometti, Mr. Blas, Mr. Andrews, Mr. Keenan. Everybody but Jim Chandler.
The chairman, since I didn't sit on the upcoming hearing, is there any purpose for me to be here at this time?
No, I don't think so. So just so you know, our next hearing is scheduled for Monday, April 26th, live and in person at Town Hall. Subject to the fact that the town is now back in the red zone. And so so we have 2 cases scheduled for that night at 7 and 7:30. And obviously everybody we're going to meet upstairs in the main auditorium. We'll spread out the tables. Everybody should wear masks. If any of the members are not comfortable participating in that meeting, get in touch with me. We can see whether it's possible for you to call in. And I believe the laws would allow you to call in and participate in that way, just in case people aren't comfortable with doing that.
Has everybody had the vaccine, John?
I'm not going to ask that because that's personal question, but the answer for me is yes.
I have, and I had the virus. I don't care.
If the selectmen, this was the selectmen decided to allow public hearings, not meetings of board that aren't public hearings, but they agreed to allow public hearings. But, if conditions worsen, they could change their minds on that, in which case we'd have to postpone those hearings. We've already advertised them to be held in person, so we wouldn't be able to say at the last minute, oh, we're going to do it over Zoom. So we're kind of stuck now with it being live, but I just wanted you to know that. And Mr. Chairman, I guess we got some problem with you receiving emails from me.
That's been clarified. That's all set.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So, so if you wish to go, you can. Glad to see you.
Good to see all of you. Have a great night.
Okay.
Hi, Jim.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, minutes for case number 2, 233 Winter Street. Do I have a motion on that?
Didn't Freddie already make a motion on this?
Oh, did you make a motion, Mr. Gometti?
And we seconded it. We didn't. Oh,
okay.
Yeah, we voted.
Okay. Yep.
No, we voted on the variance, but I'll accept the motion from Mr. Gometti and a second from Mr. Andrews on the minutes for 233 Winter Street. Let me take a roll call vote. Mr. Keeman?
Yes.
Mr. Blas?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Gometti?
Yes.
And myself, John Goldrosen, yes, 5-0. Then we have the minutes for case number 4, 270 Washington Terrace, which is the hearing that we held on March 29th in that case. So do I hear a motion on that?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Blas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Keeman. Mr. Blas?
Yes.
Mr. Keeman?
Yes.
Mr. Gometti?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
And myself, John Goldrosen, yes, that's 5-0. Minutes for case number 5, Mr. Sokolowski. This was 611 Plymouth Street, where we gave him leave to withdraw without prejudice. And let's see, Mr. Keeman did not sit on this one. Mr. Cacciatore was on this one. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion moved by Mr. Andrews. Is there a second?
I'll second it, John.
Second by Mr. Gometti. Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Gometti?
Yes.
Mr. Blas?
Yes.
And myself, John Goldrosen, yes, that's 4-0. And then the general minutes for March 29th. So all 5 of us can move on that one. Is there a motion on that?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Blas. Is there a second?
I'll second it, John.
Second by Mr. Gometti. Mr. Keeman?
Yes.
Mr. Blas?
Yes.
Mr. Gometti? Mr. Gometti, vote to approve?
Who? Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
And myself, John Goldrosen, yes, 5-0. Mr. Curran, any luck?
I called and I texted and I didn't get any response.
Okay.
I would suggest you continue it.
Okay. So Carol was scheduled for 7 and 7:30 on the 26th.
Yes.
All right. Well, I suspect the 7:30 case might run over, but I think if we continue this to 8 o'clock on the 26th, if it runs over, they'll just have to wait for us. That's all. But we haven't scheduled any meetings beyond that. So my suggestion is we continue 270 Washington Terrace until April 26th at 8 o'clock. Can I have a motion to that effect?
I would make a motion to make it 8:30, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I
think that second case is going to be a long one.
I suspect so, but on the other hand, if it turns out not to be, I don't want to have to wait till 8:30 to start the case. And I don't think the only people who would have to wait is the applicant and their engineer. There weren't any other abutters at the last hearing on 270 Washington Terrace. So I'd rather make it 8, and that means we can get started with it whenever we get done with the other cases.
All right, whatever it's agreeable to do.
Yeah, just so we don't have to wait around if it turns out we don't have to. Once we're live, things are going to go faster than they seem to go with these Zoom meetings, I'll tell you.
Well, this case, you'd have to let the applicant know that it's going to be live and not Zoom then.
Yes, yeah, no, we'll let them know. So can I have a motion to make it the 26th at 8 o'clock to continue it?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Okay, Mr. Keeman?
Second, John.
Yeah, I have a second by Mr. Gometti. Mr. Keeman?
Yes.
Mr. Blas?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. Gometti?
Yes.
And myself, John Goldrosen. Okay, the only other thing I did want to call to people's attention is I did send out the summary that Mr. Blas was supplied on the zoning changes. I haven't looked at it, and I'm not suggesting we discuss it all individual as a board, but if people want to look at that individually, the planning board hearing is on April 20th. That will be a Zoom hearing. I haven't seen, last time I checked the town remote hearings page, I didn't see it listed yet, but maybe the link is in the newspaper ad, but that's not terribly convenient. So,
The hearing is a week from tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I think that's all the business before us. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Blas. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Andrews. I'll take a roll call. Mr. Keeman?
Yes.
Mr. Blas?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmetti?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
And myself, John Goldrosen, yes. So thank you all. Can we get